Hello guys, today I'm gonna show you how to use my Joomla for iOS API to integrate your Joomla infrastructure into your iOS application. So there are a few things to do. First, you need to fire up your Joomla um, administration interface and install the required Joomla extension JBackend because my framework is in cooperation with this extension. So I'm using the community edition of JBackend. It's free for you to download and it's a great thing to just test it. And for advanced usage I recommend the Pro because it has many other use possibilities. So as you can see now, the package was installed successful. I can see now here in my components menu that here is the J backend dashboard. Here are a few things to do. You can see you can create keys, you can see logs, you can also register apps and devices, and you can send push notifications to iOS and Android devices. Um, yeah, you can just browse the documentation of JBackend to learn more about this. Now what we need to do is go to plugins and search for JBackend, and we need to activate both the content and user module so we can access these two things. The next thing is to go inside to our menu and create a new endpoint. I will just call it API. Sorry, API. And as menu item type, I will use JBack and community request. So here you have some options. Access type, I'll make it free for now because it's easier for me now. Yes, here you have some basic options. So force SSL, yes, because as you can see here, I have a valid SSL certificate. Selected modules, well, in the community edition we have only the user and content module, so we will enable all of these. And the trace and course I will just disable it for now. So one other thing is that I recommend you to turn off display menu because I think that it's better if a normal user, when he browses your website, not sees the endpoint. I'll show you why in a minute. So now you can see I have my endpoint API here, but it's hidden, and that's because when I just now access my front end, you can see here it's really basic. I have one test article here, and here the main menu, it's not the API menu item is not shown because we set it to hidden, and my login form, but that's not important. Yes, to the backend, as you can see, I have here my super user account and a tester demo user for us later to test the login inside the framework. So I have one tester in the user and I have one test article. We will work with both of these. So yes, and now to the menu item. As you can see here, it's hidden, and if I now access the menu manually, I can just go to demo/API. Oh, sorry. Demo index.php/API. Now you can see I have a response.json download, and I can open it up. Wait a minute. So now, and all it says that module is not specified. So now you can see the endpoint works, but of course we need to pass some options here so it can work. But it's also important to note this URL, sorry, for later, but I will come back to it. So we're basically done here in Joomla. So the next thing will be open up Xcode and create a new app. I will just this away for a moment. There's my Xcode here. So create a new app or a new project, and it will be a single view application. Product name, I will just call it Joomla. Oh no, because of the bundle identifier it's better. So of course you may know all these options. I will just turn off core data now. So, and save it right on my desktop. So it's created. So, okay. Right. Now it's done. We have our project. Now, of course, the first thing will be to open up, to get the Joomla4iOS framework. You can download it from the Joomla4iOS.chestry.com website and open the zip, and it will be right when you open the zip in the main folder. So we drag our framework into the embedded binaries, select copy items if needed, and create groups. Finish. And now you can see we have here our Joomla4iOS.framework file. Right, this will be important. Wait just a minute. Right, so now the next thing will be, because we will try both the article endpoint as well as the user endpoint. So first I will just prepare the UI. 1 minute please, because I will implement the tab bar with a tab bar controller. So we have the opinion to change between the two view controllers very fast. Now we will add a navigation controller. Two navigation controllers. So, okay, great. Okay, I don't care. Make the tab bar controller, of course, our initial view controller, and create relationships between these view controllers. So, yes, okay, just some UI adjustments. This is our articles, and here we will use a normal view controller because it's easier. So, and relationship. So here also large titles, and this will be our user view controller. So okay, let me see just here. I will be setting the identifier to cell, and creating a very basic cell with just a label in it. So, well, I think I will 30 will be great. Just make the cell a bit bigger. So, and a text view. So in the text view will be the content, and in the label there will be our title of the article. I can just do it big, a bit bigger and bold, so you can see it's now more like a title, and this will be non-editable and selectable, no. And now well, I will make it like this to that the cell will be adjusting to the text. So I will disable scrolling inside the text view. So now I can set up the constraints, and of course the label will have a fixed height of 30, and the text view will just be inside the cell but have no fixed height, so the height can be adjusted according to the text inside the text view. So now the last thing here is to give these two items a tag, so we can access it from the view from the Swift file later. Okay, now this will be enough. Here in the user view controller, we will just login. So we will write the method to login a existing user. So this one and this one. We will be providing a login with username and password, and a button, of course. So which says just login. Okay. Now the constraints here. Add top space of 50 because it's a nicer number. 8 with height. So this here we will be using just 8 down to the label, and of course also fixed height, and the label this and a height of 50. Okay, so the layout is done. Now we can just delete this view controller because trash, and create two new view controllers, touch class, and just call it user view controller, and another new file will be a UI table, and just call it articles table view controller. So right, now we can just delete this, and number of sections will be so not necessary. This is important, as well as this is also important, and the rest can be deleted as well. Okay, user view controller, here we can delete this also. Save these two files, go back to our storyboard, and just give it write classes. What we call it, user view controller. Now we can create the outlets here. wait a minute. Make this a bit bigger. Okay. Now we can just say username field, password field, and here a login function, which have the type button. Okay. Well, on the table view, we don't need to make any outlets because we will be accessing the items via the tag. Okay, so now we are inside our user view controller. I think we will make this first. Okay. Of course, the first thing we need to do is import our Joomla4iOS API framework. Sorry. Okay, we imported the framework. So here we need to declare it one more time. So I call it var Joomla is equal to Joomla for iOS. So okay, great. Now we will have this one. Another thing we can do right now is to set a let constant. This will be our request URL, and the request URL will be a URL with the string of our API menu item URL. So as you know from before, we created here the menu item. Oh, sorry, I'm logged out. Just log in now. Sorry. We have here the alias API. So we will need this, and of course we know our main URL. So I will have to enter here https joomla4ios.chess3.com/index.php/API. So this will be our endpoint, and you don't need to do this, but it makes it a bit easier later, because now when we call in the login function, we will simply have to call Joomla dot user login. Here you can see this request URL. We can take our request URL from above and unwrap this one. And username is of course of type string, so we call it username field dot text, and we will unwrap this too. And here we will just call it password field dot text. And on the completion, we will get a response of type data. Here we will just handle our response by the server and make some or call just, we will make it like this. We will call a, or we will create a UI alert which will say if the login was successful or not. But first, of course, we need to call if username field dot text is not equals to empty and password field dot text is not equals to empty string, and if this, we will just call this. So what does this do? It just makes sure that there is some input inside the username and password field, so it doesn't contain just an empty string, because yeah, you may know a empty username and an empty password is yeah, it's not not a very good authorization. And if there is no input, we will just create a alert which says UI alert controller, which says please enter a user uh, please enter username and password. Message will be empty for now, and we'll make it an alert. So create an action which will say okay, style will be cancel, handler will be nil. Now we call self.present. So we present our alert, animated of course, completion nil again. So we make sure that there is input inside our username and password field, and if there is no input, we will just create an alert which says please enter username and password. So this is done. Now we just have to do this one, and it's basic. Here we just get the response. One more thing is the response we get from the server is a JSON response, so we will need to declare the JSON standard. You can do it here, but I prefer doing it there because for now it doesn't matter if you do it down here or up there. But if you have many functions like log in, log out, register, etc., etc., it's better to have, say, one pool of variables or let constants you need, so you can use it down there often, and it makes code a lot more easier to read and also um, to understand. So now we just say type alias JSON standard is equals to sorry, this one, and it, of course it has a string and any object. So you may know the JSON standard. It's very basic. The key is of course a string, and the object can be any object, so it can be an integer, a string, whatever. Okay, so now this is done. You may notice that the response now is a data, so it has the format data. So our first thing will be to convert the response in JSON format. So I will call let response JSON will be equal to try JSON serialization, because this is a very great function implemented in Swift. JSON object with data, of course, our response. You can see here response data. This is the response up there. With options, we don't need any options, and then as JSON standard. So now we have our response converted into a JSON, so we can proceed with standard JSON work. So first, the response says, if you may see here, wait, I just open it again in Visual Studio. You have a response.json, and it has a key status, and it says KO or OK. So if the request was successful, the status will be OK, and if not, it will be, of course, KO. So our first thing will be to declare the status and check if it's OK or KO. So I will say status is equals to response JSON. Status as a string, because as you may see here, it is a string. So now we have our status, and all we can do now is if status status is equal to OK. Sorry. Then the request was successful, and we can just take the username and display it inside our alert controller. So I will say let username is equals to response JSON key user name, and of course this will be also a string. Okay, so now we have our username, and all we have to do now is display a alert controller and put the username inside it. So the only thing you need to notice here is that we need to call the alert function, so the present alert function, from the main queue. Yeah, from the main thread, sorry. I will put all the alert stuff into the main thread, so it's also easier to read. So I will call this dispatch queue.main async, and I will here just create again my alert, which is a alert controller with title login successful, and the message will be welcome username, and dot alert. Okay, now we will add, of course, add action. This action will just say again okay, has this cancel, the handler will be nil, present alert, animated true, completion nil. So what does this do? Well, it's basic. Create a alert, say login successful, and use our username up here. Here, create add an action to the alert controller, which just dismiss the controller again and present it. Of course, when you create a normal, I call it normal application, and want to authorize users, you will have to take this variable and save it as example in the user defaults or core data, so you can reuse it as long as the user don't log off again, doesn't log off again. So yes, but for now this is okay. I will not dive into user defaults or core data. I think this is too much here. Now the only thing we have to do now is call else, and now we got an error, so we can now get the description and say let error is response JSON. Sorry, error description. Of course, this is also a string. And again, we need to dispatch queue.main, because we now create an alert which will just say an error occurred and blah blah display the error description. So, well, quite basic. Error occurred, and I think just we of course need to unwrap the response JSON alert. Add of course an action, which you guessed it. Okay. Style cancel handler nil. Okay, that's all for now, I think. Yes. What we've done here is first initialize our framework. So import the framework, initialize it, create our request URL so we get the endpoint we need. One important note is when you create your request URL or your endpoint, use it in this format. Please don't do it like this, so you add a slash and or something like this. Just call your domain or your basic website URL and add the menu item alias behind it. The rest will be done by the framework, and it's important that you do it with this format. And here we just declared our JSON standard. Again, this is optional, but I prefer do it in this way, so you will you will make life a lot easier if you do it like this in big projects, because if you declare these things in every function and in every login, logout, registration, remind, reset, whatever, it just doesn't make sense to me, to be honest. Do it like this, and you and people reading your code afterwards will be happy. So in the login function, so when the user taps on the login button, we first check if there is input inside the username and the password field, and if not, we will create just an alert which says please enter username and password. And if there is input, we make a request to our Joomla backend with, of course, our request URL and the username of our username field and the password of our password field. Then we take the response, convert it into a JSON format, and then we check if the status of the response is okay, so the request was successful. And if it was successful, we take the username and display it inside a UI alert controller. If not, we catch the error and display it also. It's always good to revise code because you get errors. Of course, we need to present this alert as well. Now we create a alert and display the error description inside it, and well, present the alert. Yes, that's it. So it's a basic user authorization and also a yeah response work and test some JSON, and also you can modify this, save it, just save it into core data, for example, and then you will have a running authorization inside your iOS application with just a few lines of code. So I think this is nothing. I recently programmed this one without the framework, and I can tell you this was huge. So log in inside Joomla or using the Joomla data inside the iOS project. Man, this was crazy. So really, this is nothing, um, and it works. And I think, yeah, it has a beautiful syntax. Okay, but that's enough for now. Um, we can just test it now. Firing up our iPhone XS Max. But now I log in using my username tester and my password tester. And if I click login, it may take some time, and but now it says login successful, welcome tester. So yes, as been said, this is very basic. Of course, when you're in a real world scenario, you will of course save this username somewhere. And so of course, if I close the app and open it up again, now you can see it, but we are logged out again. So of course this is not suitable for um, real world app. So you will save it into core data and check it in when the app starts if the core data is empty or not. And if it's not empty, of course you load the username, etc, etc, you know that. So let's continue with our articles. We import our Joomla4iOS framework, of course, and then we declare our framework. So say Joomla is equal to Joomla4iOS. So, and now what we need to do now is we need to create a array. First we need to create a structure of our articles, which we can use later. Excuse me, struct article. So this just, as the name says, it creates a structure which we can use in our array later. And of course, when we load the articles, we load it inside the structure and inside the array. So, but now we say let title. Of course, our title will be a string, and the content will be a string too. And if the struct is created, we create an array articles, and this array is an array of the structure article. Sorry, no, sorry. Now, so now we have an array of articles, and these articles of course have a title and a content. Now we can see here in our number of rows in section, of course you worked with table views, I think so, articles dot count. So now we say we want as many table view cells as articles we have. So yes, I think it's really basic. Now again, of course, we can copy it from over here. This. So of course we need again our request URL and JSON standard. And now we can just create a function get articles where we will make a call Joomla dot get list of articles. Here we have it. Our request URL, of course, and now here you say you see all these variables have a type of string or integer and a question mark afterwards. This question mark says that the variable is optional, so you can pass something in just to filter the articles which get responded. But for now, because we only have one article, I will not filter it and just pass nil inside everything. So yeah, it's if you have, of course, again, if you have a real world application, you would set the filter according to the user input. So the user selects, for example, a category, and then you call get list of articles with your request URL and convert the category he selected, get the ID of the category and pass it in here, and you automatically get the articles of this category. So yeah, it's quite simple to use and but very powerful. So of course here we declared our response. What we now do is, of course, again get our JSON standard response. So response JSON will be try JSON serialization dot JSON object with data response. Options will be null, so as JSON standard. Again, we check our status, which is response JSON child status as a string. And again, if our status is equal to OK, we can proceed and handle our response. One thing when working with the article module is that we of course get a list of articles, so we will have to loop through all these articles and put everyone inside the array. So we have to go inside every child object inside the JSON and put it inside the array. Yeah, just do it. Let items will be equal to our response JSON child articles. So here we access the array as JSON standard. So not serialization standard. So we get a array again of items or of JSON and JSON array of articles, and this sorry I just if let of course we need to check if it exists to prevent errors. So sorry, we say we get all our articles inside the JSON and create an array of it. And now we can say for I in 0 dot smaller items dot count. So now we access every one inside the items array. So we say let item is equals to items I. So this is the specific item inside the cannot subscript for. So I think what's wrong here. Let item is equals to 4 items. What's wrong here? Okay. Sorry. Of course, we have to parse the article as an array of JSON standard, not one JSON standard object. Sorry. Okay, so now we have one article, and this one article has, of course, one title. The title will be our item title, and the content will be item content. So of course as string, and this of course a string. Okay, now what we need to do now is pass these two things into the article struct, and this article will be loaded inside the array, and then we update the table view so it gets every new article right when it is added inside the array. So we say self.articles.append article title content. Okay. Right. This, and again we have our main thread thing. So we must call the table view.reload function from the main thread. So we say self.tableview reload data. Okay. Now we can check here, of course, the error. I don't think that there is an error, but you know, error handling is very important. So error description as string, of course dispatch main. What's here? What? Dispatch? No. Oh, man. Sometimes it makes me a bit crazy. Oh, thanks. Async. Oh. No. Let alert will be UI alert controller title. Message error. Not add action. Sorry, I don't commit everything I write because I think you've seen this now then more than once, and as you may see, I mistype. True, true. Okay, so this is done. Well, this is done. We'll just revise the get article function one more time because this is the most important thing here. We call the get list of articles here with our request URL, of course, and you can filter all articles with these options here, and of course you can also set order by and order direction, so you can really easily get the specific articles and order the response with just these variables, so it's really that simple. So, but for now we just want to get all of our articles didn't already ordered by something or somehow. So we get our response, of course, converted into our JSON standard. Check the response, the status of the response. If it's okay, we loop through of all our articles, get responded, and add every article inside this array with the structure of the article created up here. Add the article into the array, and after that we call the reload data function on the table view from the main thread, so the table view gets reloaded every time a new article appends. If it's an error, of course we create an error and display it inside our alert controller. So let's continue with the table view stuff. So we already have this one, that's great. Of course, here we want as many table view cells as articles, and here we can just configure the cell. Um, the data. We say let title label will be equal to cell dot view with tag. We gave the title label the tag 1 as UI label. The title label will have the text of articles index path row dot title, of course. Let content will be equals to cell dot view with tag 2 as UI text view. Content dot text will be equals to our articles at index path dot row dot content, and then return the cell. So this is also very basic, I think you know that. We just grab the label we created in the storyboard, and we gave it the tag 1, so we grab it and set the text of the label to the title of the array. So we get the item of the array, which will have the index of the index path of the table view cell, and we access the title of this specific article. Yeah, and the same with the content, and then we return the cell. So let's build and run this and see what happens. I hope we finally get our articles in a beautiful way. So, touching, no. Of course, when you make a real world application, you need to integrate loading indicators as well as UI elements. Oh, I I forgot the important thing. We need, of course, call the get articles function when we access the view. So if not, nothing will happen. So yeah, it's basic. I mean, view that load gets called when we enter the view, and when we enter the view, we of course want to get the articles. And you can see now we have our test with its title and the content, which is beautifully displayed. The cell gets adjusted by the content size and everything is perfect. Now we can test our login again. Tester, password, tester, login. Wow, login successful, welcome tester. Great. One more thing. As you may noticed, small tip, our password gets displayed blank. So we access our password field, go inside the attribute inspector and select secure text entry. What we can also do now is, wait a sec, we just import some beautiful text bar button items. So we have these two beautiful images which we will add in the tab bar. So this will be our articles image documents user image user. If we run the app now, we have two small UI changes, but they are beautiful. So iPhone, where are you? Here you are. As you can see now, the bar button, the tab bar is beautiful. If we enter something here, the text, as we know it from every password input, it gets blurred out. Well, that's it for now. Of course, if you have questions or spot errors, please feel free to contact me. I think I will link my entry in the description and in the Joomla4iOS website and everywhere else. So I hope you will not have problems contacting me. Again, sorry for my bad English. I'm from Germany, and yes, I'm 17 and my English isn't that good, but I hope you can live with that and just enjoy my framework